So in this next part, we're going to be focused on taking the tools and getting them to animate along with the character. So before we take care of that though, one thing I want to show you is in the main camera, the grid snapping, I think it actually looks better with none for the pixel snapping. So if I show play mode right now and I move around the screen, you'll kind of notice that there's like a little bit of jitteriness as it tries to pixel snap, especially after an animation completes, like when I go back to idle state there. But if we take grid snapping and turn that off, then you'll notice with no grid snapping that the animations and the movement of the camera becomes much more smooth. So I'm actually thinking none is the way to go for grid snapping for this game. Okay, so next, in order to animate the axe or hammer, whichever tools, we need to have a pivot point set for them, which works well for our character's pivot point. So getting the exact number can be a little bit tricky, but the idea is that we want the axe to sort where when it's in the right hand down right about here, that it's going to show in front of the player. But then when the right hand is behind the character, a few pixels up when the character would be facing left direction, then we want it to sort behind the player. So I was finding if we go to the tool PNGs, that the value we want for the pivot shape is going to be, well, first let's go to pivot custom, and then we can move it. So right about here where the hilt is, but then down here to negative 0.15, I think is what I had for the values. So negative 0.15. In terms of rotating around a pivot point, that might not be the perfect spot for it, but that doesn't really matter because we're doing frame by frame animation anyway, so we can still adjust the transform to get the axe in the perfect spot. So let's hit apply here. So 0.125 and 0.15 for the pivot point. And I'm going to also apply those same values to all of these other tools for right now. So select the other ones and then change the pivot point to custom. So that was 0.15 negative on the Y and then 0.125 on the X. So hit apply and let's jump into the gatherer prefab now so we can test this. Go to tool and then adjust the tool's position to be in the right hand right about here. Okay, and if it's not sorting behind, you got to change the sprite sort mode to pivot. So let's do that. And yeah, now we can get the sorting we're looking for. So right here is about where this sprite is going to sort into the back of the player. And when it's down here, it's going to show in front. So with that, we can animate behind and in front of the player, depending on which animation we're trying to do. So that's kind of what we're looking for there. So you'll notice that this also messes our box collider shape up, and a square box collider doesn't exactly match this blade shape that well. So we can change the box collider 2D into a polygon collider to kind of have a better shape. So let's remove that, add a component, polygon collider 2D. And under points, I'm going to delete all except for 4 so that we can have a simple shape here. So just delete the extra elements until you have just element 1, 2, 3, and 0. So let's delete those, then hit edit collider and drag the points to be roughly the shape of the head of the tool. So this will just make it make more sense when it's actually colliding with something on the screen, that it should kind of more closely match the shape of the tool. Okay, so now that we have that done, let's go back out, enter animation mode, select gatherer, and let's test first by doing, I guess, like one of the harder animations first by going to gatherer idle right, and let's do gatherer walk left, I suppose. So when we want to set the keyframe points for the tool, we can just enable recording mode here, then click on the tool, and we need to adjust its position on the screen for each frame of animation. So for this left animation, the hand is actually behind the player. So let's move this upwards and into a position which it should be when the gatherer is facing left. Then let's hit E to go into rotation mode and rotate it a little bit. Do a 180 on the Y value. So you could just set that here in the animation window. You can hit W to go back into move mode and then just move the axe roughly where you think that the hand should be holding it in the background. And we can reset the Z rotation as well if we want to, or we can hit E to rotate it and then, well, make sure you're rotating the tool, not the player. So click on the tool and then you can rotate this down if you'd rather it be a little bit further down. So the main thing we're trying to achieve with that sorting point is just that when it's here, it's behind the player, and when it's down here, it is in front of the player. So Honestly, that can be one of the trickiest parts of trying to animate multiple objects together and having them sort correctly. But once we got it down, it will work pretty well. So let's jump to the next frame, and we can approximate where the hand is supposed to be here as well. So click on the tool. In this case, the left hand is swinging forward, so the right hand is swinging backwards. So let's move that backwards a bit. We can hit E to go to rotation mode, and then rotate the axe down a bit if we want. Wouldn't rotate too much though, because we're just doing a walk cycle. And you got to keyframe it if you haven't already. So if you didn't turn on recording mode, then hit keyframe so that it remembers your position, and we'll add the position rotation values to the animation window. So let's go to the next one. So for frame 02, it's the same as 01. So I'm just going to copy the position rotation values into here. And let's jump now to the final frame. Hit W to go to tool move mode, and then move the axe forwards because the hand should be coming forward a bit as well. And we can hit E for rotation mode if we want to set the value there as well. Now, if we play this animation, we're going to notice that the animation is smooth, which goes completely against how our pixel art character looks. So how we can fix that is by changing the tangents on both the position and the rotation. So select all of the keyframes except for gather sprite. Right click on them and do both tangents constant. Now if we go to the first frame, hit play, then we'll get that choppier pixel art look for our animation. And if we go to play now, we can walk with our axe in hand, and it's animated in the position that we want it to be. So, so you can test it and then just add your position rotation values for each of the frames if you need to. And basically we're just repeating those steps, but for all of the animations and frames. So it's going to take a little while. The next one I want to test though is going to be gatherer swing left. So let's go to that animation. Make sure that you kind of scrub around here so that it shows the first frame. Move the axe into position. So select tool, enable recording, hit W to do move tool, move the axe into its position, and then E for rotation mode. Okay, rotate it a little bit. In this case, we want to flip the direction of it because we're swinging to the left. And then we'll need to rotate the Z axis as well. So rotate this way back, kind of like so. W to move it into position. So in the second frame is when we're ready to swing, and then the third frame is the swing. So let's go to the second frame and set some new values. W for move mode. And let's rotate the axe even further back. Okay, like so. Make sure that record mode is on. Go to the final frame. W to move it. And then let's rotate it on Z axis, like so. Position it in the hand. Okay, and now we can test the animation. Hit play. So it's obviously smooth once again, but the keyframes are okay. So let's take the keyframes for position rotation. Right click, both tangents constant. Hit play. Okay, and then now we're going to have our actual axe swing animation. So you might think it doesn't look quite right, and I would probably agree that the X position on the first frame is not quite correct. So let's rotate this and move it kind of like so. Maybe it should be even behind the player a little bit. So let's hit play now and test. Okay, so now it takes 2 frames to kind of get the axe into position, and then 1 frame for a big swing forward. So this might look okay. Just kind of play around with it, get the settings you want, and repeat process for all the other animations. So let's do the walk right and the swing right animations. So at frame 0 here, we gotta hit recording. Let's select the tool, move it into position, rotate it. I'm going to rotate the Z forward a little bit so that the X is kind of facing the ground a little more. I'm going to select these keyframes and do right click both tangents constant so that it will have that choppy pixel art animation look. Now let's go to the next frame, hit W to do move mode, move it into position, maybe rotate the Z a little bit. Okay, and then frame 2 is just like frame 1, so I'm going to copy the keyframes from frame 00 to 02, paste those in, go to the last one, move the axe back a bit, and then rotate it downwards. Okay, and try to make sure that the axe is showing in front, if we can. So if it's not quite working right, we can adjust the pivot a little bit more. The sooner you adjust the pivot, the less it's going to mess with your animations. But let's do negative 0.2, hit apply, and maybe that'll be a little bit better here for the sorting. So let's position that and test for all the animations. We might need to readjust the position now for these. And this is why I wanted to do the harder animations first, because those would have more problems typically. So just adjusting the position on each of them, mostly. Go to walk left, and same kind of deal. I'm going to rotate this axe down. Okay, and the axe is in the back. Okay, it's still filtered. It's still sorting to the back, which is what we want. So let's hit play and test that. It's overall still fine. And let's see, we did swing right or swing left. Hit play. Okay, that's still looking fine. Maybe the positions need a little changing, but it's just a matter of tweaking it. And then here, it's fine that the axe actually shows in front because it would be in front for that hand. So that's correct, actually. Okay, let's test the walk again. I just think that the axe is rotated too far down there, but aside from that, it's good. Let's move it up a bit. Okay, move it down on this frame. And then that's the 0, 2. So I'm going to copy the values to 0, 0 and just move it on this one. So since I just did this pivot point, let's copy it now to the other tools. Just going to select them all and then change the pivot to negative 0.2 so that we're consistent across all the tools. Okay, and now we have a few of the animations done. We can hit play, test our walk cycles. So when we're facing the left, our axe is behind us, and then when we're facing the right, our axe is in front. It does come way too far down there on that final frame, I think. So it's just a matter of coming in here and changing the position for that animation. Okay, and then there's the walk right edited a bit. Okay, so let's continue working on the animations. So let's do swing up next. So with swing up, remember the right hand is where we're holding the axe. So let's record the position changes and then E to go into rotate mode, rotate it into position. I'm going to flip the Y axis. Remember that the blade has to be facing where the character's actually looking for it to make any kind of sense. And let's rotate it and position it. Okay, and next frame, let's move it up here. So we're doing the swing animation, so this needs to move far back. That might be a little overkill, but we can test it for a second. And then final frame, we rotate the Z forwards a bunch, move the axe up here to where the hand is in front of the player. I'm gonna rotate the Z a little bit, and then just make sure that the box glider's kind of in here and that front middle part. That looks pretty okay. So let's hit play. And, well, we need that constant tangents for it to look right. So both tangents constant, hit play. And that's not bad there. But the charge up to the second frame is a little off. So maybe this is too much Z rotation. So let's make it more like 135. Then adjust its position. And on the first frame, 85 degrees on the Z rotation is probably okay. So let's hit play. Okay, that's looking better. So let's do swing down now. So swing down, enter record mode, select the tool, W to do move, move it into the right hand, which is now on the left here because we're facing down. Rotate it, and I think we're going to need 180 Y rotation so that the blade is facing the right direction. And just move it over here to the left. So on the second frame, we're going to have the full pullback. So rotate this and move it back. Here it's too rotated already, so we'll move it to something like this. And then on the third frame, we need to bring it down, rotate it a lot on the Z, and then position it in the hand. So let's get it to the right about there. Select all the keyframes, both tangents constant, and we can hit play to test it. So that works pretty okay. I think maybe the pullback on the second frame is a little too much because we're supposed to be swinging down here, not overhead really. So let's rotate that a bit. move it into position. Remember to have recording mode enabled. And here, let's rotate it forward a little bit. Okay, maybe a bit more than that. Or who knows. And then hit play. Okay, maybe on the first frame, we do need it rotated more kind of horizontally like this. This is mostly just trial and error, so just get the positions to what you think looks good. It doesn't have to be exact. Okay, and then, let's see, gatherer swing left, we got that. We got gatherer swing right. Oh, no, we don't. Okay, so let's do that one next. Hit record mode, go to the tool. First frame, we need to position the axe out here in front. Rotate it, kind of like so. Maybe a little bit to the right. Then go to the next frame, move it further back, rotate it so that we have a big swing coming up. And then go to the third frame, move its position in front, rotate the Z a lot so that the axe hits the ground area, roughly speaking. And then we can select all of the keyframes, both tangents constant, hit play, and test it. So the first frame doesn't look right there. Let's rotate this forward a bit, I suppose, and then hit play. Okay, maybe on the first frame I want it to actually be more to the right. And let's put that there. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then on the gather swing left, gonna have it like that. I suppose that'll do all right for now. You're free to tweak it later if you need to. Okay, so we have the important swing animations done. So those are looking right. When we have walk left, walk right. So up and down should be a little easier. Let's hit record mode, go to tool, move the axe into position, rotate it, and we're gonna 180 the Y so that once again the axe blade is facing the right direction. Select the tool, move it into position, kind of like so. And then next frame, you just need to kind of move it and rotate it slightly. And then next frame is the first one again. So I'm going to copy paste 0, 0 to 0, 2. And then let's animate the last frame. So moving it upwards in position again. And maybe rotate it a little bit out or in. Maybe doesn't really need that. So let's hit play, kind of test it. We got to do right click, both tangents constant, hit play, and that can be kind of our run animation. So I don't like the rotations as much. So let's kind of remove those actually. I'm just going to make it consistent 90 degrees for the Z on all of them. So you can copy paste the value into each frame, hit play, and you can just test it. So that looks better now that just the position's moving for that walk animation. So let's do gather a walk down now. Hit record. Let's see, select the tool, move it into position, which is on the left here now. And then we'll rotate. So got to rotate the Y 180 degrees, W to go to position mode, position it in the hand, copy and paste the values from this frame to the second frame, or 0, 2, actually it's at the third frame. And then we need to manually set the values for 0, 1 and 0, 3. So let's move this kind of into the hand, and then 0, 3, we can maybe rotate that a little bit. And on 0, 1, I guess we'll try rotating it. I didn't like that for the walk up, but let's see how that goes. And of course, once again, we need right click, both tangents constant. So let's test that now. I still think the rotation is a little bit much. So let's actually just have a consistent rotation of -15 degrees. And we can put that for all of the Z rotations for that tool. Okay, now let's hit play. Test it one more time, and that's looking all right. Okay, so we did all the swing animations, I believe. The easy ones are actually just going to be the idles, because those are single frames, so we can do this really quickly. So record mode, tool, position it where you want it, rotate the Z-axis a little bit down for gatherer idle right, so that it's facing the ground, not really like in front of where it's looking. So let's do gatherer idle up now. Oh, and make sure that it's showing the right frame. So you might need to scrub it up here at the top a bit. Into record mode, position it. So find the right hand, and let's rotate it. And 180 on the Y. So that means we're going to need to rotate the Z a lot more. And let's move this into position. Maybe take the Z rotation and tame that back down to 90. And position it in the hand. Okay, that looks fine. gather idle left, record, and let's do tool. So position it where the right hand is, which is in back this time. Okay, so we're going to need to rotate 180 degrees on the Y. Reposition it right about there. Maybe a little up. Okay, that looks good. And finally, gather idle down. Hit record. Go select the tool. Move it into the position. Rotate it. And 180 on the Y. Yeah, we need that for it to look right. So select the tool again. W to do move. Move it into the hand. And set something for the Z rotation. So 0 is a little too little. So let's do -20. And that can be all right. Okay, so now just to test all the animations all in one go, let's hit play. Do WASD, moving around. Okay, and when you walk, just check all the animations. Make sure that it's still got that constant tangents. So we have that pixel art choppy animation look. And walk in all directions. We also want to chop in all directions. So hit F, F down, F left, F going up. And I think the way I set it up, the animations look pretty decent this time around. So hopefully with a little work, you can get it to look pretty similar. Once again, though, one of the main things that can be kind of annoying is tweaking the pivot value. So if you're using the same sprites as I am, 0.125 and -0.2 on the Y seems to be working pretty good for me right now. So that's what I'll go with for this character. Oh, and one last thing, for the Polygon collider we created, make sure you set it back to is trigger mode so that you can still run into trees and have it damage the trees like so when we collide into them. And then we'll work on actually making harvesting the trees work in the future videos. And then in the future parts, we're going to make it so that we harvest the trees rather than just immediately destroying them when our collider destroys them. So for the collider, you make sure you actually set it on the prefab to is trigger mode. If you do it during the game playing, it's not going to actually update when you exit play mode. So that's it for this video on doing the animations. That's probably one of the harder parts.